All right, we're ready to get started. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, Marley, it's you're first up, and you're the only one here.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
I think we passed out our public health report from 2022. I'm just here to kind of give an update on our public health activities for the last year and what we're looking at for 2023. So the first section is on our family home visiting and maternal child health. Kind of goes through how many visits we did. It's a busy section of our office, the maternal child health in particular. We do have some pretty goals for 2023. We want to increase. We only had 3 prenatal assessments in 2022. We've already increased that quite a bit this year with a new initiative, trying to increase referrals and increase our caseload for family home visiting, because our family home visiting grant is caseload dependent. So by the end of 2023, we'd like to be as North Country at 25, so we can ask for increased funding for the following year. So far, we're doing really well. We're already up to 23 families, which is over our caseload goal of 20 right now. So if we can get it up to 25 by the end of the year, we'll be in really good shape. Some of the initiatives we've taken with increasing our prenatal contacts have helped with those referrals. We held our community baby shower, which was really successful. Not sure if we're discussing whether we're going to do that again this year. Our funding is a little bit less this year to be able to put on something like that. But we did have 17 pregnant and new moms who came to that last year, and we did actually enroll 2 families onto the program from that, so it was a very worthwhile endeavor. It's also fun to look at how beautiful it was outside during that event. The next section is about our WIC program. WIC does remain virtual. So the public health emergency for COVID-19 is ending on May 11th. So our waivers for WIC, which allow us to, not a physical presence waiver for people to come in for their appointments, that goes 90 days past. So we're looking at returning to in-person WIC in August. There's still some guidance we're looking for from the state as far as how that's going to look. What we're anticipating is going to kind of look like a hybrid, virtual and in-person, where we would do certifications, mid-certifications, appointments in person, where they have to come in, have a height, have a weight, have a hemoglobin check for the child or the mom, and get their nutrition education and so on in person. But we have every 3-month appointments that are just nutrition education. They don't necessarily have that measurement component, and those we are looking at probably continuing to do those virtual.
Marley, do you have trouble with clients not having access to the internet to do virtual?
You know, we mostly do them by phone, so it hasn't been a big problem. And WIC actually just rolled out a new program for us that is a virtual. We've always had the language line for Spanish speaking or other languages, and now they have the language line. We have an app on the computer where we can pull up a talking head in person, which is going to be really helpful when we do those appointments. That is probably the biggest struggle, because our Spanish-speaking population has increased on our WIC program, and it is just time-consuming to do with. It's great to have the interpreter on the phone, but it's just a longer process, and so we're hoping that when we can do it in person and have a more visual, that will work a little bit better. But no, we just do those by phone, because that is the easiest way to reach people. I think that is it's really popular to do WIC by phone. It's really nice to not to have to come in for just another appointment. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a ramp up to try to get people back coming in for the appointments. But we also are missing not getting those heights and weights, and especially hemoglobins on our children. It'll be really interesting to see what our anemia rates are when we are able to start doing regular hemoglobin on our county children as well. So, but that's we have a WIC coordinator named Danielle Sefertovich, and she is working on a plan to get us back in the state back to doing the, in person, within the guidelines that the state sets forth. The state is being a little bit slow about giving us a lot of guidance. And this also highlights in here that we, since we have had Danielle as the WIC coordinator starting 2022, having that dedicated person, we have seen a kind of steady increase in our participation rates, which is great. Our average was 484 for the calendar year of 2022, but we did see an increase towards the end of the year as things really got going. The Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe has not been able to run their WIC program for the last few months, and so we have seen a little bit of an increase in caseload, just overflow from them. I think Cass County has taken more of the brunt of that, but we have seen some increase from that as well. And that's another advantage of virtual, is that you know, they don't have to come all the way to Park Rapids. Although we will, when we go in person, we will resume our LaPorte outreach clinic as well. So we do have quite a bit of caseload in that area of the county. This is just a little picture here of a grant we did last year where they had a breastfeeding tent at the Howard County Fair. So Danielle and Crystal Harris were able to be there for that day, and we were able to give away some breastfeeding supplies and do breastfeeding education and just have a place for moms to come and rest with their children while they were at the fair. We are applying for another breastfeeding and outreach grant for this year. We just submitted the application next year, so hopefully we'll be able to, we want to get some breastfeeding friendly children's books to have to spread out throughout the community, and then also do some mailings and outreach to try to make sure people are aware who may be eligible that they should enroll in WIC, because it's a great program. Any questions about WIC? No? Okay. Just a little brief about our child and teen checkup. I think the biggest thing with that has been the changeover at DHS to using individual health plans. So about half of our caseload went to Essentia. So if with this new initiative, if a healthcare system chose to enroll any patients of theirs, will get their CNTC outreach through them versus through the county or through the public health agency that normally did it. So that did cut our eligibles about in half that we do outreach to, which also decreased our funding. So we've had to make some adjustments in how we do our outreach. We still send out those letters and do the outreach activities to the children who are on straight MA and who are not enrolled with a primary care provider.
So I know Minnesota's changed several things. Was that change for Minnesota, or was that a
It was
federal?
Minnesota.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. So that's been a learning curve too, because it's been I think we previously had 3,000 to 3,500 per year that we were outreaching, and now we're about 1,700, 1,500. So it's a change. What the biggest change has been, we're still doing all the letters. They're still making the calls to the families and helping with dental appointments and whatever we can do. It's just we don't have the funds to do the same kind of outreach as far as like advertising promotion to make sure people are getting in for their child and teen checkups and those, and then able to do outreach to the clinics as much. And some of the supplies that we would give to, we would do oral care, bags, or we would do, water bottles or so on, just to promote families to make sure they're getting all their checkups. So we're just trying to revamp how we do it in a little more cost-effective way.
I was at a Prime West meeting yesterday, and one of the areas that's down is child and teen checkups. Have you found that also?
Yes, and that's a public health goal for Prime West, under the Prime West Health Directors too. It is, and I'm not, this doesn't help. I mean, it's kind of a bummer because we have a really wonderful outreach coordinator named Sandy Henry, who does such a good job. And so I think this year we're still just kind of trying to understand where our role is, because we still get calls from families who maybe aren't on our caseload necessarily. They would be running through Essentia. And we still try to provide that guidance to them to make sure that they're getting to see their providers. But I think overall, not just Prime West, just overall people going into their doctor appointments is down, and it's a tough one. So we're just trying to promote people to get those preventative care appointments. Children need a lot of appointments, and it's tough for families sometimes to be able to go in as often as they need to. As far as our adult health services, so you brought up Prime West, so we do the Prime West case management in coordination with Hubbard County. And this year now, with Blue Plus now as part of our county, that's another change for our case managers as they're learning to work with Blue Plus and do that, those caseloads as well. That does have a component with Essentia too, because sometimes they will be, if they're Essentia patient and they're Blue Plus, then that means they'll get their case management through Essentia versus the county or through public health. So just, discerning who goes where and which person has which case manager.
So I have a question on that. So is that local then, the Essentia, or do they just call a number, an 800 number? And
I don't know from what we know, I think their case managers are out of DL. Right now, at least, that's the case managers. That's what we're understanding. We're still, like I said, that's still a little bit of a new rollout here. It just started in January. But we're still, that's an incredibly busy, even with that, our case managers are incredibly busy doing assessments. PCA assessments remain very busy. We still have our first Thursday clinics, which is kind of an adult health screening clinic on the first Thursdays where Sandy will check hemoglobin A1Cs for people who walk in. We'll do blood pressure screenings, hemoglobins, and some immunizations based on, we have a limited amount of immunizations, hepatitis B and so on. Those obviously have been a little less popular the last few years with COVID, people just not coming in person, but we do still offer that. That's a nice service for the community. And we do have some people who are pretty regular at getting their hemoglobin A1C checked. It's only $10. We gave 113 doses of flu vaccine. That is something we've seen a decline in interest in as flu vaccinations, as more and more. There's just been a decreased interest with, I think, just in general, but then also people using private pharmacies or their own local providers to get their flu shots versus coming to a larger flu clinic. So we are kind of decreasing our order for next year as far as what we are ordering for flu shots. Just a little bit, I know Angie's a pretty regular attendee of county board meetings, so I won't go too much into that, but she is just a superstar as far as the work she does in the community with Hubbard and Prevention of Adverse Childhood Experiences. These are just a few of our numbers. We are just submitted our continuation grant. We're on year 6 of our 10-year grant. So I don't have, unless you have any questions about that, I won't go too in depth. Like I said, she's here pretty often. And just a little bit too about the COVID-19 response. Some of the reason we try to do a little bit of a nicer annual report this year, just to kind of show people that we are more than just COVID-19 in public health. Obviously, the response continued though with vaccinations and so on in 2022. Kind of a breakdown of our COVID vaccines. We did do, when the bivalent boosters came out last fall, we did do a few drive-through clinics that were pretty popular. We do continue to offer walk-in vaccines on Tuesdays from 9 to 11 a.m. Pretty low uptake at this point. We maybe see 1 or 2 people a week, but we do still offer that. The big change will be when that public health emergency ends, because that will change our ability to order vaccine at no cost. Right now, we're able to order vaccine at no charge. Everything, and I'm not sure how it won't happen right on the 11th, but the state is prepping us to expect by late summer, early fall, that vaccines will be private and there'll be a cost, and so we will be evaluating whether or not we would even be offering them at that point. They would have to probably go through their insurance. Same with any testing, or the other big thing would be treatments like Paxlovid. Once the public health emergency ends, will likely be charged for it instead of how it's free right now. And our cases are down. We only see the cases that are done at a doctor's office that are reported. So far in March, we've seen 22 cases. So they're not there, but they're definitely less severe. We've only had 1 death in 2023 for COVID-19.
Do you have many people hospitalized with COVID?
Not many, but we have had a couple in the last 2 months, probably 3 or 4, whether here locally or at outside hospitals.
Okay, thank you.
You do still, there are certain sectors of the population that are very vulnerable still to adverse disease from COVID-19. Yep. And yeah, and on the back is just all our hard workers of public health. We're a small team, but they work really hard and do a really good job for our county. Do you have any questions for me? Another thing I've just been trying to promote a little bit is my hubby is sponsoring a poverty simulator on May 10th. It is free. It's at Northwoods Bank. If it's something that I'll leave this with you too if you guys want to look at it. Just kind of if you've ever attended one of those before, kind of a valuable experiment to kind of see for a lot of the people that we serve in public health what life is like, the choices they have to make on a day-to-day basis to survive.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, next is Amy, for Assessor.
Are you ready for me?
Oh, yes, yes.
All right. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Just wanted to kind of talk about, just go over some of the changes that have been happening in our office and looking at the 2023 values that we have. We've just finished them up. They're sent to the outsourcing company, and we're waiting back for our final file for proofing purposes before those notices go out, but I would expect the notices to be mailed within, prior to the end of the month. And so when I talk about 2023 value changes, I always try to point out that these values are values calculated as of January 2nd, 2023, but they're actually calculated using sales from the sales study period from October 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. And the first thing that I want to touch on is time trends. So last December, we received our annual time trend report. Time trends are also referred to as market condition adjustments. If there is a positive time trend, like we are experiencing right now, then sale prices are adjusted with a monthly growth rate. The time trended sale price is the actual sale price that is used in our sales study period, not the actual price that the property sold for. So, for example, if a property sold for, let's say, $100,000, it has a monthly time trend depending on how many months it has been in that study period and how large the time trend is. We could actually use a sale price of maybe $110,000 or $120,000, depending on those adjustments. So in our 2023 countywide residential annual time trends, we're still seeing time trends from around 12% to 19%. Last year, we saw time trends from about 19 to 28. So they're less than what they were last year, but they're still quite significant. The same with the ag rural vacant land, the bare land sales that are 34.5 acres or greater. Again, last year it was 18.633. This year, 14.55. So a little bit less than last year, but still very, very high, very significant time trend. So our apartments did not receive a time trend, and industrial did not receive a time trend. We did receive a very high countywide commercial time trend of 48.96%. Now, After I received that, that's probably one of the highest time trends that I've ever seen in my career. So I started looking at commercial property in Hubbard County, and I made the decision to put together a time trend appeal. And I submitted that appeal to the Department of Revenue back in December. With that time trend appeal, I was able to submit data that showed that we had 8 commercial sales from the end of our sales study period, which ended September 30th of 2022. So from the end of September, so we're looking October, November, we had 8 commercial sales during that time period. And when I put together that data, I looked at the median sale price for those 8 commercial sales, and it was actually at 100%. So this indicated to me that our commercial market possibly leveled out, possibly even showing signs of decrease. So when I submitted that appeal, I asked that the annual time trend be completely removed, and the Department of Revenue granted my appeal, which resulted in no time trend for those commercial properties. And that actually was a really good thing for our commercial properties countywide. So now that we've kind of touched on the time trends, I also want to give you just a brief overview of the changes that we've been making in our office after we converted to that new Tyler system. After that conversion, we just started to look at some of the problem areas in our CAMA system. We made a number of changes in that system during this last year. I'm only going to touch on a few of them, half a dozen to be exact. But they're pretty significant, and you kind of need to know about them just to kind of help you, especially when county board appeal season comes around. So one of the first things that we discovered was the same outbuilding that was located on an agricultural parcel was valued higher than that same outbuilding that was on a residential parcel. And we didn't feel that that was fair or equal in any shape or form, so we adjusted the code for these outbuildings, which resulted in all outbuildings being valued equally. So we're going to have a little bit of shift in value for some of those outbuildings that are sitting on parcels that are classified as agricultural. So number 2, we also recognize that some outbuildings should depreciate faster than some of the residential buildings, depending on their use. So those outbuildings that would house livestock or even feed, they're going to have a different code on them that are going to depreciate at a higher rate than just a regular outbuilding that doesn't exhibit those 2 types of uses. We also discovered that residential and agricultural parcels with multiple outbuildings were selling at a lower median sale price than our values. To address this issue, we added a 25% reduction on outbuildings in excess of the house, the garage, and the next highest valued outbuilding. We also have some parameters in place. For instance, this doesn't apply to any commercial properties, industrial properties. It doesn't apply to travel trailers. It doesn't apply to resorts. We also didn't make any changes to structures that were valued at $2,500 or less. So if you had like a shed that was worth $1,000, we didn't we didn't mess with those either. But that was to help with that issue of those parcels that were selling for less than our assessed value. Number 4, a number of items that were previously valued on a separate tab in our old system. How do I explain this? They were items such as garages, decks, fireplaces, maybe open porches, those sorts of items that actually should be valued with the house. In our old system, they were valued on a separate tab, and in this system, they should be valued on with the house as an addition, and so we are manually making those changes. Now, unfortunately, because it is a manual update and a manual change, it's a very time-consuming process. I would say we maybe only were able to get somewhere between 20-25% of those done this year. Would that be kind of an accurate? Yeah, about that. We kind of focused on those properties that were located in our quintile, and this is a process that we'll continue with, but it's probably going to take another 2-3 years before we actually are finished up with that process. Commercial buildings were kind of overhauled as well. I actually didn't work on this, Sam did, so I'm just going to give you just a brief overview. So their sub-areas and their perimeters were completely reworked this year. This caused some commercial properties to change at different rates than others. Some increased more, had a higher percentage of increase in value than others. It was just the way that we previously had them entered. They got completely cleaned up and completely reworked this year, and that was another large change to our office. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is, in general, properties with lakeshore in excess of 500 front feet of lakeshore. We were finding that those were selling a little bit less than our assessed value also. Maria and I created an excess lakeshore adjustment, kind of a tiering system. So that first tier would be valued at 100%, and then the additional lakeshore would be valued less and less depending on how much you had. And so we have started to apply that to some parcels, and we're actually hoping to develop a lakeshore manual this year and start applying more of a uniform tiering system countywide. So those were just a few of the changes that I kind of touched on. And because we had so many changes in our office this year, and because we're not finished making all of these adjustments this year, or at this time, I should say, I made the decision to do just a very modest dwelling base value increase of only 5%. I then analyzed each taxing district individually, and I made adjustments on land and neighborhoods. And so I kind of, I put together this, and I think each of you have that in front of you. And if you look at it, if you look at that median ratio before, some of the taxing districts didn't require a large increase or a large adjustment, while some of them did need a large adjustment. As I'm paging through, I'm just kind of looking at Henrietta Township. Henrietta had 8 on-water sales with a median ratio of only 66.67%. Now, in order to bring that into compliance, I had to make a pretty large adjustment to get it between that 90 to 105% of compliance, which the Department of Revenue considers acceptable. Whereas if you look at some other taxing districts, maybe even Hubbard right below it, you know, they had 12 on-water sales, and their median ratio was at 85, compared to that 66 or 67%. So each taxing district is seeing just a, you know, a little bit different adjustment in order to bring it into compliance. The two things that I saw happening during this sales study period was there were less sales than last year, but the sale prices were still selling higher than our assessed value. We still have that strong market. I've actually talked to a couple of realtors, and they were seeing the same thing. They agreed with me. There are less sales, less inventory out there, but the prices have not went down a lot during that sales study period between October 1st of 2021 to September 30th of 2022. The other thing that I also saw was the commercial sales there was a lot of sales where commercial property was selling significantly higher than our assessed value. And that was the reason that we had that really high time trend applied to those commercial sales. But also, countywide, we had 24 commercial sales, and our median ratio was only at 61%. They were selling significantly higher than what our assessed value was. Now, Park Rapids City was the only taxing district that actually had enough sales for a valid sample. So they saw a pretty big increase. There were a couple of neighborhoods in Park Rapids City that were quite a bit lower than the other ones. Our downtown other neighborhood, we had 4 sales with only a 50% median ratio. Those properties in that neighborhood saw a pretty significant increase. Just to let you know, in case you get any calls on those, or if you have anybody, you know, asking or talking about those. We had a couple of other neighborhoods that saw really low median ratios as well. And we also had a couple of neighborhoods that came in fairly close to where we need to be. So, so that's kind of where we're at with those values. And like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at those valuation notices to be mailed prior to the end of the month. So, wondering if you guys have any questions for me or for my team?
Jamie, how about ag sales that, or bare vacant land that's the 34.5 acres or more? Are those trending higher or lower or about the same? Or?
So the time trend, are you talking about? Okay, so the countywide ag and rural vacant land, bare land sales greater than 34.5 acres, there is a time trend of 14.55% for 2023.
Okay, and what does that mean, that they went up 14.5% or?
Time trends are kind of hard to wrap your head around at times. I think of time trends as inflation. That's how it makes it easier for me to understand time trends, just by thinking of inflation. So if a property sold at the beginning of our sales study period, say it sold in October, November of 2021. If if you think about, I've always used like a new vehicle, or maybe a loaf of bread, or maybe a dozen eggs as an example. What you paid for that dozen eggs at that time compared to what you can pay, what they cost you on January 2nd, there's an inflation factor that goes along with that. So depending if you're seeing a positive time trend or a negative time trend, then those properties are seeing an increase in value from the time they sell to January 2nd of 2023. They're seeing the sale price is being trended by that amount. Now, they do a monthly time trend, and what I told you was the annual time trend. So depending on where that sale falls in that 12-month study period, it may only get 2 months of a trend applied to it, or it may get 14, depending on when, if it's sold real early in that sales study period. Yeah. Clear as mud?
Jamie was talking about 34 acres or more, but didn't you ask about 4.5 acre,
No,
the
it's 34
small-
and a half.
Oh, it was 34 and a half?
Yeah.
I missed that, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I noticed in some of the median ratios afterwards, particularly for commercial and industrial, that you're still below the 90 to 105%. Is that because that you only have to hit that in the taxing district, so you kind of average out with residential and everything else?
They actually don't get averaged out with residential, but if there's only one sale in a taxing district, it's really not considered a valid sample or a good sample. Now, countywide, we had a really low median ratio, but also after doing that time trend appeal,
Okay.
it appears to me that it's kind of leveling off, maybe even showing signs of decreasing. So I did increase all of those commercial properties outside of the city of Park Rapids as well. They just didn't see a large enough increase to get them within that 90 to 105%, or most of them didn't, I should say. So I actually called and talked to my property tax compliance officer about that, because I was a little worried that he would maybe give me a state board order for commercial properties countywide, because after all is said and done, I'm still at that 79% instead of the 95, and that's because those properties in the those properties where there was only maybe one sale in a district, that kind of brought my median down. When there's not enough sales in a taxing district to give me a good indication of what's happening in that market, I look at what's happening overall. And with the commercial, I truly felt there needed to be an increase in value, and I did increase the value on all of those rural commercial properties. But I didn't feel that I should, because if I have to do it for the entire, all commercial properties. And I didn't feel that I could do it with one sale in the taxing district, and also looking at the data that I had from when I submitted that time trend appeal, I feel like our commercial properties are leveling off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
obviously in the appeal, then he agreed with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
That's good. Thank you.
So Jamie, make sure I'm understanding this correctly. With these medium ratios now, it looks like most of them are in that 90 to 105. So that mean when people open up their the notice you're going to be sending out, there's not going to be a whole lot of shockers, of huge increases?
there's going to be some huge increases, absolutely.
Will be.
Earlier, a few moments ago, I talked about those properties in Henrietta, I believe it was.
about where we had 8 properties at 66.67 median ratio. Those properties saw some big increases in order to get them in compliance. They saw larger increases than some other taxing districts. And there were some 60s, 70s median ratios out there. Those taxing districts, they saw some pretty large increases.
But if they're already in the, 90 and above, they're not going to get,
If the median ratio, you can just kind of look at that median ratio before and what it is afterwards, and then you can kind of see, you can kind of gauge how much of a increase you're kind of looking at. So, the very first one here for Akeley Township, on water, there were 9 sales at 77%, now it's at 95, so, yeah, they saw a pretty significant increase to get them in compliance. And-
but going forward, they won't need a big increase.
Well, we're still in the middle of that study period right now. I can't tell you what, I can't tell you what I will need to do next year. It is completely dependent on what happens in the market during that 12-month study period.
I've just gotten a lot of calls last year on it, and I kind of like to see that kind of level off.
I would love to as well,
Yeah.
yes. But no, there are actually going to be some taxing districts that are going to see some pretty significant increases in order to get them in compliance. Absolutely. If you have sales with a median ratio of 66.61% in Akeley Township and 77.25, in order to get them between 90 and 105%, you have to make a large enough adjustment to be in compliance, and those are going to affect their values.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome. I'm actually putting together some rate sheets, kind of like what we had last year. I'm hoping to get those emailed out to my local assessors sometime tomorrow. I can CC you guys as well, so you can look at what happened on maybe a specific lake or a certain neighborhood as well. And then you can let me know if you have any questions on that too. So, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Can we get a rough summary of all the bullet points you went through?
Sure,
All the changes? Yeah.
sure,
Just
absolutely.
email that out too.
I can do that.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much.
Just a reminder that the schedule for local boards and county boards is on the county website. The Local Board of Appeals and Equalization are scheduled from April 13th to May 2nd, and the County Board of Appeal will begin on June 12th.
Yep.
And on June 12th, it may just begin on June 12th.
And I renewed my certificates. I know at least one
Yeah,
of
I
us
did
on the
mine
board.
too.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
All right, thank you guys so much.
All right, thanks. Okay, next, Derek, is that your name? Yeah, Park Rapids Chamber of Commerce? Okay.
Morning.
Good morning.
Are they all gonna see that, or?
You, I added it to the agenda item.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. So they're all see it. Awesome.
They all have it.
Awesome technology, I love it. All right.
Can I introduce myself? Is that okay?
Sure. You wanna say?
You all seem to know Derek, which is good because you knew he was coming. My name's Molly Luther, and I'm on the chamber board with Derek. And I own 2 businesses downtown in Park Rapids. And I helped lead the Heartland Lakes Community Branding Project. So I'm here to support him in his conversation.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, first off, thank you for the opportunity to talk today. Appreciate the invite to share a little bit about Chamber, what we're doing overall, as well as in relation to tourism marketing. So pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. I wanted to start real quick, just giving a little bit of background about the Chamber, who we are, so that you see not only me in the community, but other parts of our staff and our board. So we have 2 full-time staff myself and Tina Berkman. And then we have 2 part-time staff. So we and then we have Gene O'Malley, who manages the maintenance and custodial duties for our visitor center. So Pam and Cecilia are our 2 longest tenured members. Tina and I are both, Tina just started in January and I started in August. So we've had a lot of turnover with the full-time group, but I think we have really good momentum. As far as our board goes, again, I just want to share some names and business names because I think we have really nice diversity in terms of age, gender, and also the industry that our businesses are representing. So I'm excited about our leadership team, and I just want to give you a chance to kind of see some of those names. Not that we don't have areas to improve. I think in terms of diversity, we always have opportunities to improve. But I'm excited about where we at, where we have utilities, we have banks, we have retail, we have restaurants, we have lodging, we have a lot of different manufacturing. We represent a lot of different industries, and it gives us a balanced perspective on where we're headed and where we're going. So, yeah, and again, if you see them in the community, feel free to say hi and talk chamber with them. Now, so that's kind of who we are, but what we're doing on a regular basis. And again, this is a little bit of background before we get into the main subject of the tourism marketing piece. First and foremost, we're a nonprofit. So we're a 501c6, funded in a large extent by membership dues. So we are a membership organization. That is the core of what we do. So that's a big part of it. We also host 5 major events in the community. So we do the Heartland 200 Snowmobile Race, the Job and Career Fair coming up here, and 4th of July Parade, Legends and Logging Days, and then the Heartland Lakes Community Tree Lighting. So those are the 5 big events that we're heavily involved in, as well as promoting a number of other community events and things in the area. So I'm not going to touch too much in this slide about visitor center tourism. We'll get to those things. The networking and professional development, a big part with any chamber is supporting the business community. So a big part of what we do is with our ambassadors, some after-hours buzz, networking opportunities, as well as lunch and learns. We're excited. Speaking of tourism, we have former director Nicole Lallam is coming to the community to provide a lunch and learn about ways that every business in our area can utilize Explore Minnesota resources to market their business and not just the overall area as a DMO. So that's coming up as a lunch and learn, kind of a nice example of some of those professional development opportunities that we help line up. So with that, I want to move in just a little bit about our membership. And I like to share this slide because 350 plus business and nonprofit members is a pretty big number for our area. We're really proud of that. We've been really steady that around 350 to 365 members for the last 10 years. So pretty good penetration, always opportunity to grow that. But I also think if you look, the FTE is full-time employees or equivalent. So what that means is, we very much are a small business community. And I think that's important to keep in mind because you start adding those up, it's around 90% are less than 10 employees. 10 employees or less. So we don't have a lot of big employers, and obviously you guys are aware of that, but I like to call attention to it because it's important to remember when we talk about our business community. We also have about 50 to 60% of our members that are directly impacted by tourism. So it's not quite as much as people tend to think, but we have a number of industries that benefit from kind of downstream tourism, where there's that progressive of visit and then live, and or visit seasonal and then living here. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. In terms of, switching gears fully onto the tourism piece of it, we operate the visitor center. So 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. we operate a visitor center Monday to Friday, and that is supported by the county. So the county pays 45%, City of Park Rapids pays 45% of operating costs, the chamber pays 10%, and we manage the daily operations of the visitor center, which also serves as a 24 hours, 7 days a week wayside rest area for the state. So that's something that we do on a daily basis. And, I think sometimes locally we underestimate the impact of the visitor center. In the peak months, we're seeing close to 300 people a day walking in and out of our doors. Right, just under 40,000 total on an annual basis. So it's a pretty big impact, and that doesn't count the phone calls. Those are just people in and out of our doors, with a number of them looking for, highway maps, trail maps, recommendations on places to eat and stay and things to do and things like that. So in the summer especially, it's a big part of what we do from a staff standpoint. So as a PDF, this does not translate as well. I had about 4 or 5 different ads that I was going to scroll through, and maybe I can send those separately just to give you an idea of some of the things that were
Is it in the presentation?
in the
Do you want me to load
PowerPoint. There were different images within there, but
I can load the presentation directly.
oh, okay. Well, so as he's doing that, I'll just let me ask you this. I mean, when you think of our area, what do you think of in terms of attracting visitors?
Outdoor recreation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a big part of the Hubbard County is tourism.
And 100% that is what we're selling, right? We're selling lakes, we're selling trails, we're selling our parks and our forests. We're selling outdoor recreation and scenic beauty, natural resources, okay? And I don't think that's any secret, right? I mean, I think anyone that lives here appreciates that, right? That's part of why we live here. That's part of our quality of life. So when we're selling our area on a broad scope of thing, that's very much what we're doing. But I also like to emphasize that we try not to get too focused on one thing. And the reason for that is I wouldn't say our area is elite in any one area, but the package that we provide is elite. So Lake of the Woods might have better fishing, and there might be more things to do in Duluth or this, but the overall package of outdoor recreation, when you start looking at the combination of the lakes and the trails and the parks and we have a very, very unique location with the diversity of our area that provides incredible outdoor recreation for the whole family. So that's a big part of what we try and sell, is kind of by season and different interests. So we have our general tourism marketing where we're trying to, okay, and here it'll come, and just go one at a time here if you could, Jeff. So if the first one comes up, this is an image of our discovery guide, obviously showing the headwaters. And I like to point this, Itasca is still our #1 draw. That is the #1 point of interest for people coming into our area. So anything we're doing on a regional scale or outside Minnesota, and even in the metro, that puts us on the map. We are right next to the headwaters of the Mississippi. So that's a big piece for us. And then, obviously the lake country, and again, we're trying to draw on emotion and create a general interest with our marketing that pulls people in, and then we're going to funnel them to our website. As we kind of go through some of these. Now, this is another ad. These are all print-based advertisements that we've had go out here. And again, on this one, you can kind of see how we're trying to appeal to a lot of different interests. This is a general tourism magazine where we have an opportunity to kind of sell the variety of different things available in our community. The next one, I believe, this is our billboard on I-94 over by Moorhead. Some of you may have seen it. This is our winter one because, we're trying to sell the idea of embrace winter, and we have an opportunity here to enjoy outdoor recreation in the winter months as well. And again, selling the diversity of different things to do in our area. And then the next piece is we also do some very specific interest-based marketing where we're targeting specific groups, whether it's biking, ATV, snowmobiling, different things like that, where we have an opportunity to highlight ourselves and call attention within specific interest groups in addition to just general tourism marketing. So that kind of gives you just a few pieces of some of the things that we are currently producing and advertising with. Our total impact is around $110,000 to $120,000. And that is based on a partnership with our Convention and Visitors Bureau. It's funded by a city lodging tax. So we help manage those dollars in addition to our chamber budget, but our total impact in terms of advertising sales is right around that 110, 120,000. And we, the ads showed mostly print, but we try and diversify that across a lot of different areas, right? Because depending on the different person, you can be reached in a lot of different capacities. So we spread this around. The Discovery Guide, we produce 40,000 copies of those, and those are distributed across the state. And it's also the kind of the first step for anyone interested in our community to find out about some of the things we offer in terms of a print resources for those that aren't as fond of doing the website version. This is a quick snapshot of our website. So, the question is, how does all this relate to our county, right? And the reality is that we're creating general interests on a statewide and regional basis, and then we draw them into our website, and then we're funneling them into the chamber, and then we're going to funnel them back out to all of the things our area has to offer. And this attractions and recreations is where, and specifically the parks and forests, is highlighting a lot of the parks and recreation opportunities that the county provides and sustains. So, I wasn't able to go through this. Certainly, if you want to go to our website, parkrapids.com, and you can find this on there about some of the things that we're currently doing. I would say, and my board's well aware of this, but we have some areas that we need to improve. We're going through a website design, and I'm excited about some of the ways that we're going to enhance what we're already doing for promoting Hubbard County Parks and Recreation, because the information is there, but once people decide to come here, I think we can do a better job of selling the type of experiences that can be had at all the different parks. So right now it's very basic and fundamental, but I think we can be even better in that area. So besides that, we were recently at an Explore Minnesota Tourism Conference, and this was kind of on our horizon, this meeting, the opportunity to talk to you, and some ideas came up about potential opportunities and areas that we could, potentially work together and improve. And we want to touch on those just a little bit today as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly, because she knows Heartland Lakes better than anybody.
I am pretty familiar. Excuse me. So back, I'm going to get my years wrong, but I think it was around 2015. There was a cohort that went to the Blandon leadership training, week-long leadership training, and a lot of the conversation there was about putting the Hubbard County rec area on the map as far as tourism goes, making sure it was known region-wide, statewide, and a lot of people said, well, we're stronger together. We have this wonderful network of small towns. We're all promoting ourselves individually. Wouldn't it be great if we got together, pooled our resources, and had a bigger impact on the market? And so out of that cohort came the Community Branding Project. And that was a project that I was involved in. I was on the chamber board at the time. I was in the Blandon cohort, and I was also the chair of the Park Rapids Downtown Business Association. So as tourism leaders, we decided to take that project on and did some grassroots fundraising. The Hubbard County Board contributed money to our budget for that first phase. And the purpose of the branding project was to unite the network of small towns around Park Rapids through a shared identity to have a larger impact as a destination. The goal was to create a positive image for our area as a healthy place to visit, live, and work. So we kind of had a tourism angle, and we also had an economic development angle, because we saw those two things as the same. Tourism is such a huge part of our economy, and anything we could do to promote the economy year-round would be a good thing. Once we started, as part of the project, we got out there to all the different communities, not only in Hubbard County, but we also went to Monaga and Osage. So Osage, Park Rapids, Dorset, Nevis, Akeley, Lake George, Itasca, and Monaga. We had listening sessions in all of those communities. We engaged hundreds of people through this like year-long project. And the strongest message we heard was, as soon as you say Park Rapids Lakes area and you promote ourselves under that title, I don't feel included because I'm from Nevis. Nevis is not Park Rapids, and that's very true. So one thing we learned early in the project, listening to the community members, was we needed to find another way to market ourselves in addition to being the Park Rapids Lakes area. So the result was creating the Hubbard County, or the Heartland Lakes brand to unite all, this wonderful network of small towns so that we could promote ourselves together. So Heartland Lakes doesn't have a defined border. It's really a set of values that unites the people to the area and attracts others to visit it. We share a lot of the same attractions and resources and workforce, and it's kind of a self-selection. People choose to identify with it. So, the Heartland Lakes gives us a single voice and a unified message, but it doesn't replace each town's distinct identity. It just gives us a more effective way to communicate all this area has to offer. So what we're doing with the Chamber is kind of the steward of the Heartland Lakes brand at the moment. Heartland Lakes doesn't exist as its own structure or entity, but we've built it into our destination marketing. Do you want to touch on some of those Explore Minnesota tourism stats as far as the
next.
halo effect?
Why don't
Okay.
you went for, all right. Yeah, so, I think as Molly mentioned, some of the economic development with tourism in Heartland Lakes certainly could be done separately to a certain extent, but ideally and for the most impact are combined in our minds. There's the greatest opportunity to have the greatest effect in our area if we do combine them. Again, that Explore Minnesota Tourism Conference, we heard a little bit about this halo effect with the idea, and I think many of us experience it and know of it anecdotally, but it's some actual research and stats put behind this concept that once you see a place and you visit it, you're more likely to move there. You're more likely to take a job there. You're more likely to start a business there. And the increase is more substantial than I probably would have realized from a research standpoint. So that was really fascinating to have some data behind, like I said, some of these concepts. I mean, I know anecdotally a number of people, including my wife, that fall into this impact, right? So, and I think a lot of us do. So, we see it happen, but it's good to have some data like, okay, well, this isn't just a one-off phenomenon. There's some pretty significant substance there. And then the other piece that we learned about a little bit, and Molly had heard about this previously, but it was new for me, was this idea of significant influx of residents in the 30 to 49 age group in rural Minnesota. And I mean, you're talking the prime working years of people, and they're looking to move out of metro areas and into rural counties. So there's this they're looking for the things that we provide, that we have here already in abundance, and they want to be here. They're looking for our way of life. And all of a sudden you start piecing that together and go, okay, well, there's a significant opportunity here to leverage our tourism resources from an economic development and business growth standpoint. And we're seeing some of that happen on a statewide and even in other counties where, right now they're in the process of Explore Minnesota and DEED at the state working together to launch a new division of Explore Minnesota that's going to promote business. And it's going to work and focus on bringing a significant workforce into our state. Significant, multi-million-dollar investment on a brand new division with this concept in mind of, leveraging tourism marketing to facilitate business growth, specifically workforce. And we're also, we got to learn a little bit about Otter Tail County, which I believe they started an effort in 2017, focused on this, this rural brain game concept where they said, okay, well, we want to tap into that. And we want to, because similar to us, they're very much a tourism-focused county, and they wanted to leverage their tourism marketing to bring in workforce. So they've been doing it for about 5 years and have gotten pretty significant state and even national attention in terms of how good of a job they're doing combining tourism and workforce or economic development. So, these seem like things that a lot of us talk about, but we could do a better job of working together to make them a reality within Hubbard County. So we wanted to just kind of put those out there. Not that there's any sort of action steps that need to be had today, but opportunities for additional conversation and areas that we can partner together moving forward to have a broader impact and utilize the great tourism that we already have in this area. So, that's really kind of where we're at today, and I would say, from we're going to commit, we're already doing what we think is a pretty good job of tourism marketing in the area. We can be better, and we can even do a better job of within the county, promoting and funneling people to the different parks and recreation opportunities that are already providing. And super excited about the Deep Lake Park project. That's going to be a huge asset for our area. Not only in terms of having another place to go and have outdoor recreation, but providing some new opportunities that we don't currently have. So it's an add-on, right? I mean, that's a pretty significant addition.
I think when the bike trail from Park Rapids to Itasca is completed also, I think that'll be a big draw.
For sure. So, yeah, and, I think, if there is so we're already committed to kind of doing a better job. And like I said, with our website redesign, I'm excited about some of the opportunities we have to do a better job promoting some of those things. But I think we're very much interested in to explore additional ways that we can partner together to use our tourism marketing to influence workforce. Because from a chamber standpoint, that is the number one thing we hear from our members is we need help. We need more workforce. And obviously, the push that Heartland Lakes Development Commission and Mary are doing with housing, that's the first step. And that's super, super important within not only Park Rapids, but on a county level, having additional housing. But once we get that housing, we need to continue to pull people here because we have a lot of businesses that struggle to grow because we don't have the workforce.
Derek, with the Deep Lake Park, I don't know, it'll be a while before it's fully developed, but once it is and we have our RV sites, we'd like to see that, at least through the summer, be as fully occupied as we can. Is in partnering with the chamber, is that a good place to market? I mean, working with you guys and marketing the park? As far as
Absolutely.
Filling vacancies and that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're the right host of any sort of reservation or anything like that, but in terms of the promotion of it, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of that with RV and campgrounds already, where we're promoting them as a lodging area to start with, and then we're also taking referrals and anybody that calls and says, "Hey, I'm looking for this type of lodging in your area," and we funnel them to the different lodging members and things like that. So yeah, we could absolutely help with the promotion piece of it.
So would the county actually become a member of the chamber as like a resort would be, or how would that?
It could be. I mean, some of our, like Akeley CNC, like they have their own smaller chamber also. They're a member of the chamber. So there's relationships between chambers, or, you as a lodging entity, I suppose you could be a member that way as well. I think one of the challenges or opportunities that I see for our area as far as increasing ourselves as a destination is becoming easier to plan your visit with. So just for example, if you want to learn about all the different forests, trails, and parks, there's about 25 to 30 different websites you could go to get that information. The chamber is kind of a clearinghouse, but if you want to make a lodging reservation, there's 60 plus different members that are lodging members, campsites, campgrounds, B&Bs, resorts, hotels. So from a visitor's perspective, that's our customer, right? It's not the easiest place to plan a vacation. Lots of different separate entities that you have to explore to plan. So one of the biggest opportunities, so Deep Lake Park is going to be one of those 60 different lodging options that people have to choose from. So anything we can do to make it easier for someone to plan their stay in the Heartland Lakes or in Hubbard County would be to the benefit of all of the lodging. associate or lodging members.
So
Yeah.
I haven't gone on the website lately. If I want to look at a place to stay, are you linked? So all the 60 people are in there and I can just link it?
Yes, you can.
Correct, yeah. So we have a place under there, it's, where to stay, and then there's all the different lodging types. So if you're interested in resorts or a hotel or a RV campground, based on your interests, we have that specific group as well as just all lodging members,
So
so.
if I wanted to stay at a,
Yeah, we do have a few VRBOs as well.
okay, so if I wanted to stay at a resort, I would go into resorts, but then could I just link up to their resort through your website also?
Yes. Yep. So our website pushes people out to the individual entities. Yep. That is how we structure it. So, and I mean, right now on an annual basis, we have about 25,000 referrals off of our website to different members. That's not specifically lodging, but we're on an annual basis, we're pushing out a lot of people onto member websites. So, and including the county.
So you can see our county website for the parks. It's really boring.
Yeah.
Provides a lot of information and doesn't provide any emotional engagement. We'll be refreshing that. This is the chamber bit about,
Also,
facilities. Also relatively data-driven and boring, but the, these different searches through here would tie you directly to the providers. Derek and I had a really brief conversation about a different model that I'm familiar with from another county. And there's a way to integrate those things. The chamber and the visitor center have combined in a way, and then they've extended their countywide lodging tax to be able to provide more of an impact relative to advertising. But when you start talking specifically about reservations, this is Two Harbors, this is their city campground. When you book your reservation here, the city has, Reserve America is somebody who provides the service like that, so they do the reservations for you. So we don't take on staff and we don't create capacity. We contract with somebody else to do this for us. All the state parks are booked through a reservation agency. They don't do that themselves. So all of these things are out there. We had a conversation with Stuart Crosby and updated some of the information in the Deep Lake Park Master Plan relative to the questions they were asking on how we were going to promote that and how we were going to fund that and how we were going to develop that property. So that was all submitted yesterday, and hopefully we raise our grade relative to that and have the opportunity to apply for funding this year or next year relative to the first phases. But we don't want to be tourism in Hubbard County. We already have people who do that. And certainly there's some things that we can work through, but, and there's some things that we want specifically. I anticipate that we will have a link from the county webpage to the Deep Lake Park project, but we'll also have, that'll also have its own link, so it'll be searchable and public and pay for that to promote it, so people can find that specifically and directly, rather than have to find it through the county website. 'Cause
Right.
finding anything
For
through the
sure.
county website is, unless you
Yeah.
do county websites, it's really hard to find.
And visitors don't go to government websites when they, when they plan their trip.
Whatever link we have with the Park Rapids Chamber of Commerce to Deep Lake Park needs to be directly to, not through the county, but
Yes,
directly to it.
we'll
right?
have a standalone
Yeah, yeah.
webpage
sure.
for Deep Lake Park.
And Deep Lake Park is a great opportunity, but the county already has so many amazing things that we could promote better as well. And we can try and improve that through the chamber's website because we're in the, in the process of redoing that website. But, I mean, looking through your outdoor rec plan, I mean, you've already have an amazing inventory. And under each, when you talk about each asset, there's a little description for marketing and promotion. And a lot of times it says partner with the chamber or the local clubs to do the promotion. And I think we could probably just up our game a little bit and do that even better with the existing assets that are already built out and already exist. And maybe we're just not telling the story of them that well. Like your Park and Rec Finder, that amazing interactive map that you have on the county website, visitors would struggle to find that. I don't know that it's a available through our through
have
the
to
chamber website, but,
double check.
you know, it's got the wonderful tools built into it as far as filtering, you know, what type of activity are you looking for? I mean, that's amazing. And if we had something similar for lodging, that would be awesome as well. You know, when you make a reservation through VRBO or another kind of central booking site like that, you can filter by, you know, do you want to be on the water? Do you want to be in the woods? Do you want to have an outdoor pool or an indoor pool? Do you need to have a playground? You can set all these criteria and it'll narrow down what your options are for you. Right now, we have a list of members and, you know, to figure out, you know, the depth of the amenities that each member lodging facility provides, you've got to do a lot of clicking and a lot of calling.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, there's a ton of moving pieces. And everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So I really do like the Heartland Lakes brand.
Great.
I know as a county board, you know, we've been working hard to break down silos between communities, et cetera, throughout the county and start to look at things countywide. Because we're better together than we are separate. And so I like that. I love the brand, but what's the next steps to keep the Heartland Lakes brand alive and embraced by all, but yet still be able to keep their own identity?
That's a great
How do we
question.
bring all this together
So
under one umbrella without losing those identities?
Well, and I'm, you know, I'm glad that Jeff brought up the idea of you know, our side conversation, because that is happening. There are places that are doing that where there's an overarching county-wide, you know, that's in Visit Cook County. They maintain the identities of individual communities like Lutzen and Grand Marais and things like that, but their broad marketing at a state and regional level is county focused. And then you have the individual chambers and things like that within that. So they have Visit Cook County as kind of an umbrella organization, and then they have 3 groups underneath there as well that are for individual communities. That's also happening in Ottertail. There's an Ottertail County group led by the Eric Osberg I mentioned earlier, but Fergus Falls still has their own chamber. Fergus Falls still has their own visitors bureau. So that is happening, and we could certainly do that, I think, and that's part of that ongoing discussion piece is, you know, maybe the Heartland Lakes becomes kind of that overarching regional entity while we still maintain things like the Park Rapids Chamber and the Nevis Chamber and the Akeley Chamber and Monocacy and Sia. So there are ways to do that. I think the challenge for us is how do we do that in the best way for our area, right? Because there's a lot of different ways to structure it. The hard part will be figuring out what makes the most sense within our communities and what people have the greatest appetite for. So structure-wise, I think there's ways to figure that out. You know, funding is obviously a challenge as well. You know, right now we're funded by, you know, membership events, some advertising, and the City of Park Rapids Visitors Bureau. But, you know, there's a significant opportunity out there too, funding wise, if we could either, you know, voluntary or mandatory, having some funding from the resort revenue that's getting brought into the area. With, you know, we mentioned lodging tax piece, like, I mean, those are significant opportunities. They would take a lot of work, a lot of discussion, a lot of engagement, but that would totally transform the funding piece and allow us to do a lot more.
So all the pieces seem to be there, but they're just not brought together.
Correct.
They're
It's
not brought
almost
together.
like you need a strategic planning session of all the entities that you're asking to be
100%.
part of this.
Yes.
And sit down and figure out how we're going to do this, because I do like what Jeff's got on the screen, because I was just going through my head, instead of Park Rapids Lake area or Nevis Lakes area, it's Park Rapids, a member of the Heartland Lakes area.
Yes.
Yep.
Branding in some way like that everybody brands, so they keep their local identity, but it's all under the umbrella of the bigger.
And I think so far, the Park Rapids Lakes Area Chamber has had the broadest membership. So they've been the owner of the brand, you know, for lack of any other home for it. But it is a member-based organization. So it is, you know, one of its main functions is to promote and support its members. But Heartland Lakes isn't necessarily a member organization. You know, it's not necessarily like Osage has to pay for us to promote its stuff. We need to just take the the high road of promoting the best of the entire area, because that's putting our best foot forward as far as a destination. And that's kind of the tricky part. I do see, I'm on the Explore Minnesota Tourism Council. It's a council of about 20 people in the state. And there is talk of Explore Minnesota Tourism offering grants for destination development. So if we have the larger Heartland Lakes umbrella identity, we could work with, Dorset to further its restaurant capital of the world niche. That's its niche within the Heartland Lakes, right? We could work with Akeley to help. How can we help Akeley improve its ATV capital of the Heartland Lakes brand, its own identity within the overall Heartland Lakes? So I think, that as part of this.
And then a discussion on, how do you fund the maintenance of this brand?
Yeah, because when you're talking about that scope and the number of communities and people involved, you're talking about significant time investment, right? And likely staff in order to fuel that. And as important as it is, individually, the chamber hasn't been able to sustain that or advance it. But working with a broader group and an opportunity to find new funding sources would break down that door in a hurry.
So do all members pay the same amount?
At the chamber?
Yeah.
No.
Our membership is based on number of employees. So the size of the business dictates, we have nonprofit rates, we have 0 to 2. So that breakdown of the membership I showed, each of those groups would have a different membership rate within our organization. So, and that's just based on, obviously the size and capacity to pay a membership fee.
The resorts are by number of units?
Correct. Yep. So they have a kind of a complicated where it's by bed or RV site, campsite. So it depends on so they have a base membership fee, and then they pay by bedroom or campsite.
I was actually on the chamber board in the late 90s, early 2000s, but back then there was quite a bit of competition, between maybe the Nevis Chamber and also what was that, Congress Minnesota Resorts. But are they all pretty well working together now?
Yeah, we have a great relationship, and maybe that, and I'm fairly new, but that could be in part due to the Heartland Lakes branding effort, and really good outreach. I'm not too familiar with what it was like before then, but it seems like we're in a great spot right now.
Yeah.
I got a question on, and I'm surprised I'm asking this question, on social media. What presence do you have there? I have no presence on social media, but I know it's a big thing. I'm part of the Mississippi Headwaters Board, and we've got Minnesota Traditions, where we've got 66,000 Twitter followers and 35,000 Facebook followers. And I know that some of the member counties are looking at partnering with Mississippi Headwaters Board and Minnesota Traditions to promote their counties. And that's where a few weeks ago I asked if we're promoting Hubbard County and if we want to. So it's great to hear this morning that, the Park Rapids area and Heartland Lakes area is doing a lot.
Yeah, and certainly we're very active on social media. I'm in the process of kind of creating new strategies around how we do that, because we were spread kind of thin and not doing any of them as well as I would like to. At one point there, I think we had 8 or 9 different social media accounts just on Park Rapids Chamber and the Visit Park Rapids, which is the CVB, and that's not even including the 3 or 4 Heartland Lakes accounts that are out there and not being kept up. Our strongest brand is the Visit Park Rapids. The tourism piece gets the largest play on social media. I believe on Facebook it's 5,000 or 6,000. It's nothing like what you're talking about, but a substantial following nonetheless. So we're certainly pretty active on there, and the tourism piece is much more of an appeal on social media than just chamber and business updates and news, things like that. So the local piece of it is not even close to the following that we have from a broader visitor scope.
It seems to me the largest hurdle is is the one I mentioned earlier, is figuring out how to fund it and maintain
Yes,
the
how
the
to
wrapper over
manage it
everything.
and fund
If
it.
you figure that out, the rest of it doesn't look that difficult.
No.
Yes.
Think of it as really simple.
Yeah.
Extend the tourism tax countywide.
And I would,
Simple to say, right?
Simple to say.
That's the model, that's how Visit Cook County works, is they're funded by a countywide tourism tax. And each of these, Lutz Tofty, Schroeder, Grand Marais, Gunflint Trail, and Grand Portage, each have their own, they don't have their own chamber. Park Rapids, or Grand Marais is the only one that has a chamber. But the rest of them all have their tourism groups and they have their board, right?
Right.
So, the coordinator of Visit Cook County doesn't do any advertising, they contract for the advertising to be done. They coordinate the rest of these groups so that they're meeting and hitting and talking. A portion of that 3% that's collected, that comes in, goes back to each of these groups to fund their own projects and programs,
neat.
right?
I didn't know that.
And then the balance of it is used for promotion of the tourism within the county, within the area. So and the 3% sales tax doesn't hit any of the business owners. It hits all of the.
Visitors.
It hits all the people that are visiting. And
I
A,
like
they
that.
really don't see that. And B, they don't, they're almost expecting it.
One of the things I ran in the business I'm in, these types of things alone are not enough by themselves. Every individual business still has to do their own marketing, because every individual business or individual community is unique in its own way. But this becomes the broad wrapper to get the attraction here. And then the local communities and the individual businesses compete for the people you're bringing here, is the way it should be done. If you don't do it that way, and you just expect this to carry the load,
Yeah.
it won't work. But if they work in harmony together, it works great.
That's a big
Jeff?
reason why we do a lot of advertising within our discovery guide. We have the mentality that, we're the funnel that brings people into the area, and then it's up to you to get them in your own doors.
You
From a
you hit the
business
same
standpoint.
thing, you go to lodging, you look for a specific area, you look for a resort, and then you go to their website, and then it's on them. right?
Yeah.
And everybody's they've got to do their
I'm
best.
here for the recreation,
Yep.
big picture, and then when I get here, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
When
Or
they're-
I wanna go out to eat.
when
I
they're-
got all these restaurants.
So we just need to make it easy
Which
for
one
them
am
to
I gonna
plan
do?
that trip.
Yep.
If they can see that they can visit Heartland Lakes and go to 8 different small
Right.
towns,
Yes.
that is a huge advantage over other communities, yes. But we just need to tell that story better to feed the funnel of visitors and engage that halo effect, right? So that they turn into, cabin owners or business owners or. Jeff, would you mind going to visit heartlandlakes.com? Because I just want to give you a taste for some of the, there we go. So this is at the end of the first phase of our Heartland Lakes. There's only really been one phase, but at the end of the first phase of the project, we did have a Visit Heartland Lakes website. There is a Live Work website, which has, some of the same information, but it's just speaking to somebody who's thinking about relocating. So we've also run, just in this last winter, video ads online, like B-roll or pre-roll videos to advertisements for the Heartland Lakes, which was funded by the city lodging tax. And the quality of that video and the feel that it gives you is very similar to what you were just looking at with Visit Cook County. So we have a lot of really great marketing assets, and we're doing the best with what we've got, but it is kind of we're just keeping this going while we find some sustainable funding. After the first phase, the first thing we did was apply for a Northwest Minnesota Communities Thrive grant, which would have been $200,000 over 2 years. And we didn't get that. They gave it to Halstead, I believe. And they said, try again in another 2 years. And I don't believe that they've done a second round of that. But that was our first attempt at additional funding to keep the brand going. And then when Butch Delahunt was the director of the chamber, we were just brainstorming all the time on trying how to expand the lodging surcharge to be a source of sustainable funding for Heartland Lakes. And it was just, a fairly big battle, and we didn't know how to get there. And, that kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, it was gonna be a question is how many are participating in the lodging tax?
Right now, it's basically in city limits, and then we have 2 resorts that provide a piece voluntarily, but that has waned. There used to be about 10 resorts that participated in a marketing partnership program that we had. That's down to 2, so that's really dropped off, and seems to be there was a little bit of fear and lack of education that, well, people are going to go somewhere else if I charge them a lot, an extra tax. And the reality is, like Jeff said, almost anywhere you go, there's some sort of a tourism or lodging tax, and people just expect it, and they're not going to, suddenly go somewhere else because you're charging 3%. That's a tax on there. So there would need to be a lot of education about this is happening everywhere, and this is how we can help your resort and your business stay full year round, or at least as long as they're open. So there would be a lot of work to do, but that is something, like Molly said, that we couldn't do alone. I mean, that would take a significant interest and support and leadership from this group at the county level.
You do have to be careful with some of that too, because while I don't think we're anywhere near the tipping point like the city of Duluth is, it's a detriment
What's happening in?
sometimes with all the taxes.
Oh, all the taxes that are added on,
You
and
go
yeah.
and you go to stay there and you look at your bill and you go, okay. It's a little over the top.
Yeah, and just for clarification, they have significantly more than just a standard 3% lodging, right? I mean,
Yes, right.
they have multiple taxes, and I'd have to double check the percentages, but my understanding is they have some additional
The city of
sales.
Duluth is maxed out on every possible additional local sales tax
Yeah,
option.
And I actually would prefer to call it something different than just a lodging tax, because I think,
Surcharge was the,
well, yeah, because people will want to, confusion sets in on what the funds are for, if it's just called a lodging tax sometimes.
so a tourism tax
Yeah,
is a
but-
preferred, yep.
That voluntary lodging tax surcharge started, when I was a resort owner, and so I went 1 year from not having it to 1 year doing it, and I had nobody question it.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
great.
They were used to it elsewhere, so maybe education is
Yeah.
a big thing.
Well, there you go. You might have just signed yourself up for something.
Oh.
We got a testimonial.
Yeah, yeah.
At Explore Minnesota Tourism, when people say, well, don't you have a lodging surcharge? And we're like, no, then like, oh my God, you're missing out on the biggest source of funding. It's almost to the point where if you don't have it, you're just leaving money on the table, and that will put you behind from a product perspective as far as being competitive with other destinations that are charging it, and our marketing, the
Well, and I
marketing
know there
reflects
was
that.
There's been a push for quite a while for some of it, for a lodging tax countywide, but you know what, we were nowhere ready. And now, now I do think that some of the pieces are in place and together where, we might benefit from something like that now, because now we kind of know where we're going.
Yeah.
We didn't know that 4 or 5 years ago.
You have to have the structure to support it, because if you just dropped $1.5 million
Where?
without a plan, it would be a problem.
Yeah.
So
We could figure that
It would be
out.
a process.
We still got some planning to do, though, to figure
Yeah.
it out in a little more detail before you would ever implement something like that. But the pieces are there now. They weren't a while ago. They're there now.
Does the chamber do any business climate promotion type thing? The reason why I ask is the Minnesota Employment and Economic Development, we've got the Hubbard County profile here, and I was surprised to see that 40% of the people in Hubbard County that have jobs, don't work in Hubbard County. So we talk about, housing and stuff like that, where 40% of our residents at work are going, I know, like in my district, I'm part of the Bemidji community, even though I live in Hubbard County, and a lot of my constituents obviously live in Hubbard County, but we work in Bemidji, we shop there, we go to church there, we recreate there, and then again, we have a lot of residents from that area coming to northern Hubbard County to drive snowmobiles, ATVs, fish, and all that kind of stuff too, so it's kind of a back and forth, but like I say, I'm kind of interested in what kind of promotion we as a county, and when I talk to business owners and individuals and stuff like that, I tell them to come to Hubbard County. The air is fresher, the water's cleaner, and the taxes are lower. Now, I don't know if I've brought anybody to Hubbard County, but I'm trying.
You're right. What was your question as far as what does the chamber do?
Yeah, what kind of promotions or can we do if you don't already, type of a thing?
That is a great question. I would say that is like the live and work here. The business attraction and talent attraction piece is not something we've done a lot of, but it presents one of our biggest opportunities, going down the road because of that, that funnel. And so, yeah, we haven't done a lot. To your point, we do have a number of people that are, living in Becker County, Wadena County, et cetera, and traveling to Hubbard County to work and that sort of thing. So that piece flows both ways, but there's a significant opportunity to capitalize and market more about this as a destination to have your business.
And I was surprised. I did check, like, Becker County is, I think it was like 15% come or don't work, don't work in Becker County. Beltrami County is the same thing. But I know people that work here at the courthouse that live in Beltrami County. And I know people that work in Bemidji that live in Park Rapids. I have a friend that's over on 8th Crow Wing Lake. I had an opportunity to work in Park Rapids, and it's a 42-mile trip. And I thought, no, I don't know if I want to be driving 42 miles for a job. But yet there are people that are doing that every day.
I don't think I've ever met anybody that's visited here that didn't like it.
Yeah.
I haven't
Seriously. I mean, so it wouldn't take just a small percent, if even that, increase in the amount of people visiting to pay for something like this.
Yeah, and that's what the marketing company that Visit Cook County hires does, is they make that message very visible on billboards, in social media. I tell you, you search for something on Visit Cook County, and then every YouTube video you run for the next 30 days comes up with a Visit Cook County, 5-second ad. They're very good at doing that and putting that in the forefront of people's minds. There's a lot of research that has to be done before you could jump into this. But I think anecdotally, we understand that it would be helpful, that everybody would, well, does everybody benefit from that? There's people in Cook County who say, turn the ads off, there's too many people here in the summer, right? Admit that's the case. I don't think any of our lodging or restaurants or retail salespeople would ever say that there's too many people in downtown or in Dorset or anywhere else throughout the county at this point, so. There's a lot of homework to be done before any triggers are pulled.
When you say that too, I do know residents that don't like tourists. They feel
100%.
that they come up here and go wild because they're on vacation, and it seems to give them a license to do whatever they want. But yet, it's a
It's
big
the
part of our
economy.
county.
Yeah.
And I think
The other
you could,
unique thing about our area, that it's probably like similar to Cook County's too. We've got all these different things, but because of the geography and the different classifications of lakes we have, very seldom is it ever in conflict. All of these things.
We're more accessible than the Boundary Waters is, and I think probably tourism-wise, I think our impact is probably only second or third to theirs for how significant of an impact it has on our economy. So you can say I don't like tourists, but you just have to realize in the summer it means that.
Yeah.
Don't try to turn left on Highway 34.
right.
Yeah.
But we can do
Three
it,
rights. Three rights.
responsibly,
Don't
if
do it. Go
if,
around, go around.
part of the values that are articulated through the Heartland Lakes brand is access to the outdoors and the preservation and conservation of the environment and our small town way of life, because that's why we live here and that's why people want to visit here. So if we, through our growth or our tourism promotions, undo any of that, then we've just ruined our product. So I think as a Heartland Lakes, as people promoting the Heartland Lakes, we would also want to do anything we can proactively to protect what makes us special and protect this place for the people that are here year-round also.
Yeah.
But as a business owner, yeah, I would love it if our seasons were evened out a little bit more. And I'm encouraged to see that Explore Minnesota Tourism at the state level is putting a lot of resources into promoting winter as an exotic experience that you have to have, you know, polar plunging, saunaing, you know, ice castles, all of that great stuff. So they are working at that level on our behalf to just attract people to Minnesota in the winter. And then we can do the best to say, we are open for business in the winter here in the Heartland Lakes, and we have all these opportunities for you to experience. I mean, I know that you know, a lodging surcharge is a big project with lots of work, you know, that would go into it. And as someone that's been working on this, I hate to say it, but probably for like how old is my son? Maybe 9 years. You know, anything we can do to raise the bar while we're working on bigger or more sustainable funding is, you know, anything we can do to have a conversation about that is really important, because so far the chamber on their, you know, our budget is pretty steady at the chamber. And we're doing the best we can in the meantime. But if a lodging surcharge is going to take 2 or 3 years, maybe there's something creative we can do.
That's the question I asked earlier, Ian. What's the next step? What entity is going to pick up the ball and go?
Yeah, so great question. And I would say, you know, we're, you know, very willing to be that entity that leads the charge. I think the question would be, you know, involvement from the county level. If, you know, if we are organizing a group to sit down and really look at this, you know, we're going to need involvement and support, you know, from this group, and whether that's a, you know, commissioner or Jeff or just whether, you know, what does that involvement look like, is a question for you guys to consider, I would say, in the sense of, you know, we're going to need to work together to make it happen. And we're glad to pick up the ball and lead the charge. But this group is a critical entity in making that happen. So I want to make sure to have a seat at the table and heavily involved in that process. And I would say there's a couple of thoughts in my mind. Is one, I mean, we can do a lot of the research and just kind of continue some of the conversations. We actually, we have a couple of resources locally with Dee Dee Lemire, who works with the Minnesota Extension on community vitality and the impact of tourism and economic development. She is willing to, you know, lead a panel discussion and provide that locally on some of the benefits and things that they're seeing on a statewide basis. So there's some opportunities there to continue the conversation. But yeah, I guess the question that I have for this group is, you know, if we take that on, you know, who or how do you want us to involve the county going forward?
A key part of this, of research that would be very helpful is, as I remember researching this, and I didn't save it prior to running for office, but when lodging tax was an issue again. And this county did act on something on lodging tax a while back, and I know there were 2 different ways you can enact a lodging tax. One requires a referendum, basically, but I believe there was something else, some alternate track the county took, and if they did do that, it would not require a referendum then. But I can't remember the details on it, so some research on that would be beneficial. You know, what decision was made by the county back then, and, you know, how do we get from point A to point Z? If they made the one decision, it's
Yeah.
quite easy. If they didn't, it's a longer process.
So which position are we in?
I remember reading that at one point as well, and it's not coming to me on what the details were. I did read through that.
Position.
I believe
I
so.
think they did it.
Jeff, is that a web that you can untangle, or I wouldn't even know how to
We can do some.
find that out?
We can
It was
search.
from September 22nd of 2020.
That recently?
No, it's further back
It's
than
further
that.
I think it was
back?
further
Okay,
back
is
than that.
Okay, because that's one that
back
came
when
up when I Googled
Dick
it.
Devine and some of those guys were on the county board, and they had this discussion.
We can search. It's a little harder.
It's a resolution somewhere in the,
If you go back, if it's since 2014, it's relatively easy to find. If it's before that, it's a more manual process.
because I do believe they did it in the manner where it would not require a
If it was
referendum.
filed with the state of Minnesota, it's easy to find
Yep.
because we can go back and get copies of that
And
documentation.
it is, because it was on a list with a whole bunch of other counties.
Okay, well then I
at that
can,
meeting, you recommended
I
looking
read
at
the same thing you did. I did,
And I
yeah.
didn't save it, shame on me. And
I read it recently and I can't recall what it said, so shame on me.
yeah.
Possible that has
It's there.
expired, or?
It's there somewhere.
no,
it-
that documentation with the Department of Revenue doesn't expire.
Okay.
They don't throw anything away. I think the bigger, possibly from the board standpoint, would be having the conversations with all the other communities and talking about how you would organize them to the point for Heartland Lakes to come to the board and say, we want to increase the revenue that we have coming in through this tax process, without having all of the other groups coming in and saying, yeah, we're all asking the same thing, would be kind of a hard lift. So I think that doing the research and finding out what the methods are and what the process is, that's one thing. The other thing is building the affinity and having the support of the local communities.
We
to
did
say
do
that.
listening sessions in all of these communities. Some are easier to meet with, like Nevis was great because they have a Nevis CNC, and there was people to tap into right away. They were very supportive, but we were very early in the process, and the biggest message everyone said was, don't promote Nevis as the Park Rapids Lakes area. So we addressed that. That was like concern number one in every community that we went to. So now that we've overcome that, I think re-engaging them, would be awesome to see where they're at. And I think the grassroots acceptance of Heartland Lakes, we've seen it proliferate as far as people building it into their business names, or Dorset bought street banners that were in Heartland Lakes. But a community like Lake George is more complicated when there's just a collection of business owners. They're not really organized, nor do they necessarily need to be, but it's harder to,
Yeah.
who do you call?
Yep. But I think, honestly, I think we could identify a path forward with that. And don't forget the other partner that, that the county board is already engaged in, and that's Heartland Lakes Development Commission. We talk about the economic development impact of this. We can't not tie it to the other hard numbers and the other issues that we're working on. Those things need to come hand in hand.
For sure, and I have had conversations with Mary about some of this as well, and I think we're very much aligned in terms of priorities and the overall scope of what needs to come first. So,
But I know that that you'd asked the question about marketing and what we're doing countywide and what we're going to do for Deep Lake Park, and what we're not going to do is create a marketing arm of Hubbard County. We're going to use the resources that are available to us, and we are going to improve the information that we have available through our own specific channels. And if you read the new iteration of the master plan for Deep Lake Park, you'll see that we've gotten a lot more specific on what we're going to do with marketing and how we're going to make that stuff available and who we're going to partner with. So that's in there. The questions will be answered, and hopefully over the course of the next, I don't know how many number of months, we'll be updating the county website, and we'll see. I asked Stuart Crosby to give us an illustrated development phasing map for the park project, so that we could show the phasing and the timetable and how we're going to do that, and the county's commitment, and what grant funding is available for these development pieces. And then you can kind of flip through and see, okay, well, here's what it looks like fully developed, and here's what's in the first phase, and here's second, and have those things highlighted. And again, for our purpose, the initial push is to eliminate the safety hazards on the site so that we can open that space up to public use as soon as possible. So we're moving forward with that first, applying for grant funds so we can improve the road and the parking so that we can actually invite people down there in a way that's safe. And then we'll develop everything out from that. But it's not a small endeavor, but it is a small endeavor within the realm of tourism in Hubbard County. But it's also going to be pretty unique.
It's so exciting. It's going to be phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, from someone in the tourism community, I'm really jazzed about it, and I think it's just phenomenal that the county is able to do that project for the area. So David's question, I think maybe the chamber, our next step could be to continue, you know, Dee Dee Lemire at University of Minnesota Extension. We were at a conference with her, and she knows what's brewing with Heartland Lakes and with Deep Lake Park, and she was willing to coordinate a conversation as far as helping us explore how this would roll out or develop. So maybe we could move forward with her and then see how the county would like to participate in that conversation. Would that be acceptable?
Fantastic. Well, we'll reach out to her, and we'll also start doing some of that homework on what it takes to get, tax implemented and, community support, because that is a key part of it, for sure.
Right, yeah, I think some of the hesitancy with some of the smaller communities is the funding piece, so if that's cleared up, that's the biggest barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you. Again, unless anyone has additional questions, we again, very much appreciate the opportunity to talk today and are excited about where we're headed together.
Thank
Derek
you.
and Molly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else? Okay, you have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned.